So the
Let
plan,
me, Phil,
yeah,
hang on a second. Let me go ahead and officially start this. Welcome to the November meeting of the Astronomy Club of Akron. Our speaker tonight is Phil Creed, and he's going to give a talk on astrophotography processing. I'm sure, I think everybody knows Phil. Maybe not. He's from longtime member of the Wilderness Center Astronomy Club, and very dedicated observer and astrophotographer. And I'm going to try spotlight for everyone. Yeah, that'll work. Cool.
Okay.
Okay, Phil, it's all yours. Did you share your screen?
Oh, wow. The webcam really does add 10 pounds to me. I'm just kidding. Okay. Let me hit the share screen thing. Okay, I'm unmuting.
I'm sorry, Phil. I was muting people and I thoughtlessly muted you too.
Okay, I somehow.
What's the problem? You're not able to share?
What I want to see basically is my computer screen on here. How do I do that?
You click on the, do you see the green share screen button?
Yes.
Underneath you? Yeah, pick that. And then you'll get the option to choose a particular app or the whole screen, whatever's on the screen.
I'm looking for a whole screen thing.
Yeah, because just an app sometimes can be a little bit finicky.
There you go.
There you go.
Can you see my laptop?
Sure do.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All righty then. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do here is basically going to do a soup to nuts processing of an astrophoto. Now, in this particular case, this is going to involve several hours worth of data, I think 4 hours total on the California nebula. And basically, here's the deal. It's kind of like anything can happen when it's live. I have not processed this yet. So you're literally going to watch as I do this from soup to nuts.
Sweet.
Okay.
So first thing I do when I take astrophotos after I'm done is I make sure that I have the proper calibration frames. Okay, so that means that after you've taken your lights frames, which is the object that you're trying to photograph, you take a set of darks, which match the exposure time only with the lens cap on. You match the exposure time in the ISO setting and the temperature. So if there's any thermal noise or whatever, you can subtract that out. The next thing you do is you want to use what are known as flats, and that corrects for vignetting and if there's any dust motes on your sensor. And then for readout noise, you take what are known as biases. Well, the reason why that comes into play is that the first program I open up is this one over here, which is called Deep Sky Stacker. And this is freeware. You can download this, and it's pretty intuitive. Basically, what you would do is when it says open up your files, you just like these things would be your lights. Okay. You can then put in your darks, your flats, and your bias frames. Once you've done that, you let Deep Sky Stacker do its thing. And what it will do is it will take all of your images and it will stack them together. So the reason why you want to be doing stacking is every individual picture is going to have a little bit of noise. So When you take 10, 20, 30 or more, what happens is that your signal to noise ratio goes up. And what that means is that the noise itself becomes a lot finer, becomes a lot more muted. And whatever you're trying to image, that being a nebula, a galaxy, or whatever, that's where it really starts to lift itself out from the background. When you're done with that, it will generate an autosave file. Once it does that, I just click out of this program. I'm not going to run this program because if you actually run this thing with the amount of exposures that I take, we're going to be here for quite a while. Usually what this program does, it will take anywhere between 30 and 60 minutes. If I'm running in like 300 exposures. Most of the time when I take exposures, they're unguided. I mean, they're tracked, but they're not guided. So most of these exposures are typically in the range of 30 to 45 seconds. So once I am out of Deep Sky Stacker and I've got my autosave file, and I'll just track down what I'm looking for here. I want to say it is this one right here. This was generated on the 7th. So it is indeed that. Okay. I then open up this file, this program here called PixInsight. And I think this program is 230 euros, which comes out to a little bit over $250 US. There's other programs you can use. Some people prefer to use Photoshop, and that's fine. But Photoshop is subscription based. PixInsight, basically, you pay once, you cry once. PixInsight has a very extensive community of users, and it has some good technical support. The only problem with PixInsight is it is not user-friendly. It takes a long time to really learn how to do it, and it's almost like you basically have to sit down and with somebody who's actually run PixInsight. That's been a recurring issue with PixInsight. It's kind of like knowing the basics of aerodynamics, knowing how to fly a Cessna, and then the next thing you know, you're in the cockpit of a jetliner. Good luck. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that file under desktop, and let's open this up.
Phil, does Deep Sky Stacker have, or rather, does PixInsight not do any stacking?
You can.
Or averaging?
Oh, it will do stacking. It will do all the things you want. It'll even have a rejection algorithm in it too. The only thing about it is it took me 2 days to figure out how to stretch a photo in PixInsight. So the idea of doing like stacking and calibration in it, just to me, is just something I never got around to doing because it's so daunting just how to learn anything else in PixInsight.
I know what you mean. Nebulosity, I still can't stretch as easily as I can with Deep Sky Stacker. So
yeah, Deep Sky Stacker is very intuitive. It's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated, and it just does what you need it to do. Okay, one thing I'm going to do here before I do anything else is I'm going to do what's called a linear stretch. And okay, so you guys now see what I'm saying then?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
All right. Now you're probably wondering what is going on here. I mean, you can tell that's the California nebula, but you're thinking, what's up with the weird margins and what in the world is up with that purple sky?
Right.
The margins are because I was basically trying to take images of the California nebula, but from night to night, I hadn't quite put the camera in the same spot. So as I'm taking images and it's tracking. On some nights it got like these are the areas where I got imaging in on all the nights. Like over here though, I might have gotten one of those nights, but not others. And then out here, this might be a case where I only got, you know, maybe one session's worth. So the first thing I would want to do is I would want to clip out all of the areas that don't really, you know, that are not going to help the image. So go out to about, call it about right there. And now we have, okay, a better presentation here. The purple sky is because I was using a narrowband filter. The camera that I'm using is modded, so it will detect, it's basically designed to really be sensitive to H alpha emissions, like, for instance, something like the California nebula. But I've got a lot of light pollution. So what I ended up doing is I put a narrowband filter on this. So what that does is it allows the H alpha to pass through, but it blocks the other stuff. It just so happens that when you look at a neutral background, it looks purple. I would prefer that the background not be purple, as you might suspect. Can you guys hear my audio? Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're all muted though, so we can
Okay.
expel various gases and not interrupt you.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I really would prefer to get rid of purple background. So I bring up automatic background extractor, and I am just simply going to do a division correction. And when this goes through, you should have kind of more of a neutral color to the background, if all goes as planned. All right. Assume that all goes as planned, because again, I am not really sure. Okay. And there we go. That looks a bit more like what I was trying to go for. So the purple background is gone. Now, one thing I want to do before I really start delving too much into this, you see how I've got like quite a bit of noise in the background here? I would like to do a little bit of noise reduction here. And there's multiple ways to do this. I have found that the way that works best for me, and you know, opinions vary, is a multi-scale linear transform. So there's two things I do. One is I put a linear mask on, and that is, and I will explain why I'm doing this. On these areas right here where it says layer and scale, what I'm basically doing is I'm telling it like what kind of a scale are we looking at in terms of noise reduction. So this would be the smallest scale right here. This would be as if I'm going further out, and I'm going to use about 3 scales right here. The larger scales basically are to take care of variations that happen over more pixels. Okay, the individual pixel to pixel variation is going to be, as you can tell right here, is pretty significant. So I'm going to put the thresholds on the smallest scale to be higher, and on the larger scales, I'm going to put those thresholds lower, and I'm going to lower the amount as well. And as far as like what the exact amounts are, this is just one of those things where I'm just basically guessing. What I don't really want to do noise reduction on, because it might reduce the detail, is the actual nebula itself. So on our linear mask, I want to preview the mask. Okay, I would prefer to do a little bit of amplification just to see if I can get, there we go. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do noise reduction on the background, but not necessarily on the nebula itself. And let's see if 800 does the trick. I might have to max this out here. Okay, that's reasonably good. All right. And I'm going to close out of that. Doggone it. Okay, that's better. All right, now I'm just going to run the noise reduction. Now I want to zoom in on the background just to see the effect that it does. So here we go. Okay, now you guys see that the background itself now looks smoother. Okay, if you want to see what the difference is in A versus B, this was before, and this is after. Okay, so I kind of like where that is right now. So for the time being, I'm just going to leave that where it is. And now I'm going to, now remember, I still did a linear stretch on this thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of that stretch. So now this is an unstretched image, but I've taken care of the background and I've taken care of the noise. So the first thing I'm going to do, just as a intermediate step, I'm just going to save it as a TIFF file, and I'm going to say work in progress, T1 for TIFF, no compression. Okay, so now, if worse comes to worse, I can always go back to this spot right there. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is now it is time to actually stretch this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the histogram transformation. And there's my file. Okay, now can you guys see where the histogram is way on the left?
What's a histogram, Phil?
Histogram is basically showing you where the distribution of the brightnesses of all the pixels are. Okay, and if you guys look carefully, you can start to make out that there's data right on the far left end. This is darker, this is lighter. So what this basically says that all my data is dark at this point, which quite frankly, it is. Okay. What's on the top is going to be the outlet. What is on the bottom is basically what I'm actually going to manually control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to stretch this thing. And what you're going to notice over time is that the histogram peak starts to move over to the right and the image starts to brighten. So after the first stretch, now you can just, if you're in a dark room and your screen is bright right now, you can just start to make out the California nebula in the picture right now. I'm going to do another stretch. And now we've got more nebulosity. Okay. So now what you're seeing right here with this histogram, what you're seeing right in the middle of that peak, that is where the most common brightness of a pixel is, which happens to be the background. Right on the bottom would be the dimmest ones that are in that background. And what's out here in this portion is going to be anything that's part of the nebula. And on the far, as we're getting towards the right-hand side, that's going to be something that's going to be pretty bright, which is going to correspond to any pixel that's around a star. Does everyone get that? I mean, or do you want me to elaborate on that a little bit more? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, I mean, as it is right now, the first thing you're going to notice is I've got quite a bit of nebulosity here, and I'm starting to pick up the fainter stuff down here. But there's a little bit of a catch here. The more, and I'm going to hit a preview button to show you the difference, okay? As I start stretching this thing, okay, a couple things are going to happen. Yes, I'm getting more nebulosity here, but now my background is also getting brighter too. And my stars are getting more bloated. There's a practical limit as to how much I can stretch everything at once. I'm going to try to stretch it all at once out to about here. Okay. And actually, now that I think about that, I'm just going to save it again as, I'm just going to resave the file. Okay. This is where it starts to get tricky. What I would like to do is I would really like to do a couple of things. I would like to stretch the nebula more. I'd like to get it brighter, but I don't want to get the background brighter, and I really don't want to get stars to become really bloated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some duplicate images. The first one, I'm just simply going to call G, and I'll explain later why I'm doing this. Second one, because I'm so creative with names, S. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make two images. Okay, I'm basically going to split these duplicate images are going to serve two different functions. One of them is just going to have stars. The other one is going to have everything but stars. So in order to generate the star images only, I'm going to use an app called StarNet. What this is going to do is this is going to take this photo and it's going to strip out everything except for the stars. This does take a little bit of time, probably in the range of about 2 to 5 minutes. And I have to do the same thing for the next file. But once I've done that, this is basically the rate limiting step that we have
What
right
do you
here.
mean when you say an app? Is it a module inside PixInsight? Or
It is, well, this version of PixInsight, it was an add-on. Now, I believe if you get the latest version of PixInsight now, I believe this comes standard with PixInsight. So if you downloaded and paid for a PixInsight license right now, this would come standard with that.
okay, so this older one, it's like a plugin.
Yes. It does take a bit of time. Fortunately, because I already cropped the file, the result is that the file size that I'm now working on is quite a bit smaller than it would have been had I used the entire frame. Because I think I'm only using about 60–70% of the actual frame that I started with when I took the file directly out of Deep Sky Stack. And every little bit helps because StarNet is, again, it's a little bit slow, but once it does its thing, it's worth it. But the idea basically is to work on the stars, the nebula, and the background independently. So that way you can basically tweak each one of those variables. And then when you're done, you combine the results into a composite image. And that is what I will post on Facebook. At least that's the plan. And it can't possibly go wrong. Right?
Every plan works, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But yeah, it does. I mean, StarNet is one of those things that I think there is a way to speed it up. I mean, a simple way for me to speed it up easily would just simply get a laptop with a solid state drive. But you know, this laptop itself is only, I think, a year and a half old, and I don't want to be buying a laptop anytime soon. But once this, like I said, once this is done, then I'm going to do the same thing to the other photo. Only this time it's going to be the opposite. I'm going to take everything. I take the star out, and I really need this thing to get done quickly. But that's okay. It's one of those things where I know that I'm imaging in a star-rich area in Perseus, so it will be it will have a high star density in it. That's just nature of the business here. And one thing I should point out, using a narrowband filter, a lot of your star colors don't necessarily translate well because you're clipping out so much of the spectrum. You're really only letting two things through, and that is, you know, H alpha, and then there's another band width for oxygen 3 and H beta. So that's kind of like in the bluish turquoise part of the spectrum. So you're basically getting blue, green, and red. Okay, there we go. So there's our star image. And you can see this has got nothing but stars in it. What I'm going to do here, first of all, just to get these a little bit smaller, I'm just going to drop. See, if I go like this, I can drop them in size. I don't want to go that extreme. I just want to drop them just a tiny, tiny bit. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller, not greatly smaller. And I'm just going to set that aside. Now, onto this image, I don't want to create a star mask. So now what I'm using is I'm going to isolate everything stars. So what I'm going to get here is going to be an image that has a background and a nebula, but no star. So like when you see somebody who posted an image where it's like, oh, this is what the Veil Nebula looks like, but without any stars, this is how they do it. Or at least this is one of the ways that they do it. If they're using PixInsight, this is how they would do it. And like I said, as I promised, this is actually using StarNet is actually the slowest step, because once this is done, this gets a lot quicker. So you guys use like, I think Glenn, you mentioned that you did some, you use nebulosity.
Yeah, I've got nebulosity, but I need to do some more YouTube training on it.
Does it have a tool like this? Because I think it might.
Maybe. It's got a ton of stuff in it, yeah.
Incidentally, because the little icon is just kind of spinning its wheels. The first time I used StarNet, I thought PixInsight had basically locked up. And I finally saw a YouTube video that says, if this thing happens, let it go. And I'm like, thanks for telling me. Because I thought like, okay, I must have downloaded a corrupted file or something like this, or it's just not working. But it just takes time. This is also why I try not to deal with really, really, really large files. If I have to crop something before I start processing it, that's why I'm not terribly broken up about it, because that means I'm only dealing with a smaller file size that will at least go a little bit quicker. But if you look carefully in the process console box, you'll notice that the last time I ran StarNet for that other image, it took 3 minutes and 51 seconds. So this is not a quick thing. And that's kind of the problem with PixInsight, is it's kind of like a put stuff in, get stuff out, but you really have no idea until it actually does its thing. Photoshop is admittedly a bit more of a, you can kind of see what's happening as you're going along. And so, like I said, these programs are designed very differently. I'm convinced that PixInsight was designed by aliens, but they are aliens that are benevolent, and they just want us Earthlings to improve our astrophotos. They just forgot to give us an instruction manual in any earthly language. And that's why learning this program is an adventure. And StarNet should be wrapping.
To prove you're worthy.
Well, I had one time I was talking with some guy in the Columbus Club for like 2 hours just to figure out how to adequately stretch, a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy. Because, like I said, there's nothing intuitive about this program, and that's really my only criticism about it. Now, once you delve into the thing, it becomes a bit more. It becomes a bit more old hat, but still, it's just not designed to be readily learned. Okay, so here we go. This is our image without the stars, and you can see just how extensive the nebulosity is here. Can you guys see my cursor? The little crosshairs on the image. Okay.
Yeah.
From here down to here.
Yes.
That is what most people popularly think of as the California nebula. If you look at an old photo, or if you look at people's visual impressions of it under a really dark sky, that's about the most they can see. you'll notice that this stuff extends from here all the way out to here. So that's quite a ways. Now, we already worked on the star image, so I'm done with StarNet. What I am then going to do is I'm going to extract what's known as a luminance channel. Now, what this is instead of an R, G, or a B, it's just simply a luminance value. But there is a reason why I'm doing this. And what I want to do is I want to create what's known as a luminance mask. And I appreciate the fact you guys are recording this, because this is somewhat tough to explain unless you are this is somewhat tough to explain unless you're actually watching it being done.
Do we know a Jacob?
What's that?
There's somebody in the waiting room.
I don't know who that is. Can you go in and
Okay.
is there any way you can communicate with that person without letting them out of the waiting room? No,
Can I-
Yeah, I'll try it.
Phil, Phil, real quick, I just want to explain to him what happened. We got bombed. Last meeting, we got bombed by somebody, some foul-mouthed kid that came in and just,
Got it.
so we've been having to be real kind of careful.
Okay.
Because I don't want that to happen again.
No, I get it.
Yeah, I'm messaging him, asking for his name.
Okay. Because I'm not sure who Jacob is.
Sorry, Phil, go ahead.
That's all right. Okay, so this is our luminance. This is our luminance image right here. Now, this is probably the only time when I actually want to start clipping. Now, what I mean by clipping is, okay, as I bring the slider over here, I'm still not digging into that histogram. Now, if I go too far, watch what happens. See how like a lot of those pixels disappear? Okay. I don't want to necessarily do that. What I want to do is I basically want to stretch this a little bit, but I want to get rid of basically I want to get rid of everything except for the nebulosity itself. So this is about where I want to put it. So now I have a luminance mask. So I blocked out everything except for the nebula. Why would I want to do that? Well, now that I have this set up, basically all I'm working on right now is I inverted the mask. So I had everything blocked out except for the nebula. Inverting the mask meaning now I'm working on everything except for the nebula, which in this case is the background. So all I want to do is hold on. Okay, this whole the zoom screen thing, it is right in front of the very buttons that I need. So how do I get rid of that? Oh, there we go. I just drag it down here. Never mind. Okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do noise reduction on the background itself. This is only on the background itself. So yes, I'm going to do another round of noise reduction. And the idea is I want to smooth it. The smoother I get this, the darker I can get it without clipping. And if you clip, what happens is you start assigning a zero black pixel value to various pixels, and your image doesn't really look that good. Okay, so it did kind of smooth it out. Here's before, and here's after. So I did a little bit of smoothing off. That part's good. Now, Well, the next thing I want to do is, wait a minute, hold on. I did not have the mask enabled. Okay, let me try that again. Okay. And I do not need it to show the mask. We're going to run that same thing. ACDNR is just another noise reduction algorithm. It goes a lot quicker than some of the other ones. I just use it just because it's convenient. So we're just gonna adjust the noise in the background. Okay, now that I've done that, okay, the mask is still on and inverted. I want to remove that mask. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to work on that file again, on that image again. Only this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it. I'm just going to darken it a little bit. Okay. So now I've got my image darker. My nebula is still, the brightness is still largely untouched. Now, if I want to work on the background again, this time around, what I'm going to do is okay, you can see, like this now. What I'm doing here is I'm darkening the background, but I'm largely leaving the nebula alone. I don't want to go too crazy with this, but I just want to darken it just a little bit more. Okay, now we've got it darker. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, again, when the mask is inverted, all I'm working on is the background. What if I want to work on the nebula itself? Take away the mask inversion, and just to make sure, okay, so I've got the mask on, but it is not inverted. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to histogram transformation again. This time around, now what you're going to notice is if I play around with the histogram thing, what's going to be affected now is not going to be the background, it's going to be the nebula. Well, that's obviously not what I want to do. I would prefer to go the other way, just to brighten it up a bit. And there is a certain point where, you know, you can have too much of a good thing. That part is true. Okay. But, you know, just like everything in life, you know, everything in moderation. Okay, now I'm still working on the nebula itself. Question, do you guys like the color hue? Do you prefer it to be a little bit bluer, a little bit more pink, or you just like it red as it is?
I like it as is.
Yeah, it looks pretty
It
good.
looks good.
Okay.
You
Okay.
you know best. So
Well, what the first thing I'm going to do with this is that, just because I just think it could use a little bit more saturation. Okay, this controls
I
saturation.
do like seeing, you know, more variance in the star colors, but not at the expense of making the nebulosity look weird.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna bump up this. This is gonna bump up the saturation of the nebula. That's after. That's before. Again, you don't want to go too crazy in terms of saturation, but I mean, every little bit will help. I can do a little bit of sharpening. I think I'll give it a touch more saturation, just a bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if you do sharpening on this, and this is an easy way to do it, just unsharp mask. This is one of the oldest utilities in regards to this. What I want to see is the effect of the nebula here, and I don't want to go too crazy. I'm going to drop this down a little bit, and let's see what it does. Okay, so there is that's our after. And that's our before. You guys see that there's a little bit of a difference in sharpness there, especially around this dust details right here. It's kind of subtle,
Can you
but
do the before and after again or
this
no?
is the before, and this is after some sharpening. It's kind of a subtle thing, but
Yeah, it's very subtle.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't see much difference.
well, I'll show you what happens if I go too much on it. Like if I go out to say something like this. And now it just kind of like, I don't know. Now it looks like a little bit, I mean, it definitely sharpens things up, but it looks a bit too, I don't know, granular or what have you. So I'm just going to use the default settings. Let's just see what that does. And that looks pretty decent. So, and like I said, this is the after.
Yeah, it looks good.
And this is before. So you can see that did sharpen it up a little bit. And like I said, not crazy. You don't
I
want
saw it better that time, the difference.
Okay. But I didn't want to go too much on this. So, okay, so I'm going to now remove the mask. Let's see. That's actually not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Actually, that is not what I wanted to do at all. Because I actually applied that to the autosave file. Not what I wanted to do. So let's see what happened with, first of all, let me see. Okay. So, crap. That's all right. Anything can happen live. All right. But this is fixable. All right. First thing I'm going to do, mask. We're going to invert the mask. I'm then going to do the noise reduction on the background. Sorry about that. It's just one of those things that just happened.
We'll get over it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're fine.
Okay, so did that? Yes. Okay, that did work. Okay, now, next thing I'm going to do is with the mask on it and inverted. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I am going to go to histogram. I'm going to remove the mask for the time being. And now I'm going to start darkening that background. Don't flip. There you go. And okay. That looks better. Okay, that's on the glow. That's on the glow there. Okay. So I've gotten the darker. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to histogram transformation. I'm now going to darken that background a little bit more. Like I said, not go crazy, but now since we already did the steps, this becomes a lot easier to remember the order now. I'm going to re-invert. So now, I'm taking the inversion off. So now I'm just working on the nebula itself. So the next thing I want to do is brighten the nebula. A little bit like that. It doesn't have to be crazy. Okay. Bump up the saturation. Basically the same steps I was doing before. That's about where I had it, somewhere around there. Okay. And the next thing we wanted to do, there was one, oh yes, we did a sharp. So let's take a look. And yeah, that looks reasonably well. Okay. Okay, that's our, let's take the mask for the time. Okay. So we're getting toward the end here. The next thing I was going to do is go to a thing called Pixel Math. And I'm just going to simply do an expression here, G plus S. Does anyone want to guess what I just did?
Green plus something.
G plus S. Why did I type G plus S?
Well, I'm saying green plus something.
Well, recall the image that had the nebula on it was called G. The image that had just the stars on it is called S.
Wait, you didn't let me
okay.
finish. I meant
You're adding,
the G picture plus the S picture.
That's right. And I want to create a new image. I'm just going to call it. C1 for combined. Just there is no activity. Hold on. And if I've done this correctly, voila. Okay. This is now the combined image. So what we were doing is we kept the stars constant. We bolstered the nebula, but we also darkened the sky background. And I'd say, just based on this, I would call this good. I mean, I suppose I could improve upon this, but this is a case where any improvements I can make on this are pretty marginal. There's nice detail that you see in these tendrils of nebulosity, and this thing goes out quite a ways. I've got a good signal. I don't have a lot of noise, and I would just call this one good. So I'm just going to simply save that as NGC 1499 T1. And I'm going to move the, okay. And one little trick, by the way, when you post stuff on Facebook, you save it as a PNG, it does not compress it to hell and gone. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm saving this now as a PNG. So then, when I post it onto Facebook, you'll actually get an image that doesn't look kind of like it's been really, really compressed and kind of splotchy. I'll move this little bar down here. But there you have it. There's a nice processed image. I like like I said, the stars themselves aren't that big. There is a little bit of color to the stars. Nebula filters, though, kind of distort the colors that you get. I mean, in other words, anything that's red is really going to start coming through. Anything that's like kind of bluish will also come through. Basically, from soup to nuts, that's the finished product.
It looks terrific.
It does.
Thank you. And I can stop the screen sharing.
Now, you said that you like you had a lot of data. You had processed an image before, and now
I had 1 hour
and
before.
then you added more
Mhm.
time to it. So do you have that originally processed one to show us the comparison to what you have now?
the raw.
I think I might. Let me go back to the screen sharing. Good
I mean, if
question.
I understand it correctly, so you had an hour's worth of data, you processed a picture, you said, okay, that's cool, but then now you're adding more data and combining it to make an even better picture.
Yeah,
Right.
let me track down the original. Oh boy, where is it? I'm gonna use my gut instinct and say that it is right. So this is after 1 hour's worth. Which is okay, but these portions out here didn't quite come out as right. I could just barely start to make out some of the stuff down here. I mean, this is okay. That's
Is it on the right screen? Because you're saying this like you're pointing to something, but I don't see.
It should be on what you guys should be able to see what my laptop sees,
I
right?
see an image right now, but
Yes,
was getting
it
the
is not.
idea
I'm
that you
not.
were
This is
pointing.
not in PixInsight right now. This is just on a Windows photo viewer.
Oh, okay. All right. I see.
So that's
Oh, it's
1
a
hour.
TIFF file. Okay.
Yeah, that's 1 hour. And this is what I have right now with 4 hours. So I've gotten more nebulosity out here. And I've got a little bit more nebulosity down around here. And I can always tweak this thing a little bit more. The one thing that I caution against though, when you're doing imaging is that, I mean, more is generally better, but there is a certain point where you kind of get diminishing returns.
Sure. But I can see more noise in this than in the other one. So yeah, good show.
So, okay, but anywho, that is the presentation. And let me stop the sharing there. Okay. And that is it. I'm Phil Creed and I approve this message.
Oh, cool. That was cool, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've got a ton of patience.
Well, before I learned how to do StarNet, I was trying all sorts of tricks to try to get like the nebula to really pop without loading the stars or really making the background bright, and none of it looked right. I mean, and then once I found how to use that plugin, it works so much better. And like I said, I could always go back and kind of tweak what I was doing, but I also realized the fact that I was, you're kind of up against a time constraint.
Yeah.
Normally when I process an image soup to nuts, I usually try to devote somewhere in the range of about 2 hours, sometimes 2.5, just to get everything right where I want
I see
it.
that's a SourceForge program, it looks like. So
But
neural
yeah,
network.
that's how it's done.
Says StarNet is a neural network that can remove stars from images in one simple step. Pretty cool.
It's a simple step. It takes a span of geological time, but it's a simple step.
Yeah, it's simple. It just has to do it a bunch.
Yeah. Now it helps if you're shooting something like the Helix Nebula because it's a really star poor region. But something that's in the middle of the Milky Way with a 135 millimeter telephoto lens has a lot of stars in it.
So Phil, you probably already discussed this. I didn't catch all of the very beginning, but could you go over again just the basics of the camera you use?
Okay, that camera is a kind of old tech, really. It's a Nikon D5300, which came out in 2013. So the camera, I mean, at least in terms of retail life, is already 8 years old. The iterations that came after that, which was the D5500 and the D5600, have used the exact same sensor. They have a little bit longer battery life, but when it comes to the image quality, it's the sensor uber alles. Okay, you have a good sensor, you're going to take better pictures. The noise that I get with the Nikon's not too bad. because the D5300 is an older camera, you can get a used D5300 that already has the H alpha mod in it for $500 or less.
Hmm.
So it doesn't require. The thing is about DSLRs, at least when it comes to astrophotography, you don't necessarily get what you pay for. And I mean, the lens that I used on the thing is only $500. The only reason that lens is cheap is because that Samyang 135 millimeter lens is manual focus,
Ah.
which is really fun at f2.
Do you have a Batman mask to help?
Yes, I do. I don't
Those
even.
things are pretty amazing.
I don't even attempt to focus that thing without a bat mask. Not to say that it can't be done, but if your idea of fun is trying to delicately pull a splinter out of a questionably sedated polar bear, it's not something you want to do.
I know it was many exposures too. What were some of the typical exposure times?
Well, I'm shooting unguided, but the lens that I was using, I was shooting at f2.8. So the best overall combination that I had of a decent exposure with each sub, but at the same time, not trying to get too long where I start getting guiding issues, was 45 seconds.
Oh, wow.
With a narrowband filter, you really have to bump up your exposure time. And I should point out where I was shooting these things from. Most of that data came from my driveway in Jackson Township.
Wow.
And some of it came under bright moonlight. But when I say that a narrowband filter blocks out stuff other than the actual emission from the nebula, I'm not kidding. I've been very impressed with this thing. Now, it's totally useless if you want to try to shoot like the Pleiades nebulosity or Reflection Nebula or say the Andromeda Galaxy. But for an emission nebula, it's basically a cheat code for astrophotography.
I'm surprised you could go 45 seconds without getting any.
Well, I am on a tracking grid. Okay.
Okay.
The issue is that I'm not guiding it. Okay. What I mean by that is that I'm not sent. I mean, if there's periodic error in the mount, I'm not running an exposure long enough to see it.
Okay, got it.
So like with the if you think of like a mount with all the gears and everything, the gears have the teeth have to line up perfectly, and if there's any slop in there, that's going to show up with your star either tracking too fast or too slow, and you get an oval shaped star.
Yes.
So to prevent that from happening, you keep your exposure short. So in my case, I find basically at 135 millimeters at 45 seconds, that's a good exposure time. If I go like say a bit over a minute, that's when I start noticing that about 10-20% or more of my subs have oval stars, and that's not good, because if you have oval stars, that also means you've blurred the fine detail in the target object, and you don't want that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
well, as far as polar alignment is concerned, you don't have to be real precision on your polar alignment, right?
With a 135 millimeter lens, no. I try to, just because because at least with a Star Adventure, that thing is so darn easy to set up, that I'm like, well, if I'm only going to waste another 60 seconds just trying to get it within, say 5 arc minutes or less, I might as well do that. Okay. What I'm not going to try to do is burn 30 minutes trying to get it within 30 arc seconds. That's not necessary for something like that. I mean, in all honesty, with a 135 millimeter lens, like I said, anything within probably 10 arc minutes is more than sufficient. And it's even more lax if you start taking wide angle. Let's say you do like a wide angle Milky Way shot. You got like a 35 millimeter lens, and you want to track that thing. Well, you're talking, you're talking getting to the point where you're talking 20, 25 arc seconds per pixel. So if you've got like a 30 plus or minus 30 arc second periodic error, you know, you could run that thing probably 2 minutes or something like this, and you're not even going to see it. And your polar alignment error can be a lot more liberal at that point. Basically, with a wide angle lens, get Polaris inside the polar alignment scope, and you're probably good.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
No,
Cool. Thanks, Phil. That was
Alrighty.
very informative.
That was great.
Really
First
appreciate
time I've
it.
ever seen that.
Yeah.
And PixInsight
cool.
can be yours for the low price of about $250.
okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Yes,
Cool.
I'm sure.